G'day, Starlo here. You know, fishing is heaps of fun and it helps get you and your mates out onto our fabulous waterways. But it's even more fun if you actually catch something. Well, stick with me because I'm going to share some tips and tricks with you that'll help make sure that you do catch something next time you go fishing. We're going to start with the absolute basics, and that means selecting some fishing tackle. Most towns and suburbs have a tackle shop or two, and you should always try to shop locally. But tackle shops can be confusing places. There's just so much gear to choose from. Where do you start? It's best to seek advice from the staff. They're usually keen fishers. They know what works best and will suit you. Sometimes it makes sense to buy a combo, which is a rod and reel that's already been put together. You'll need some line, and there are lots of choices here as well. Should you go for braid or monofilament? And if you choose mono, should it be nylon or fluorocarbon? Each has its place, and we'll look at that in more detail soon. But once again, listen to the people in the tackle shop and carefully consider their advice. Next, you'll need some hooks, a few sinkers, and maybe some swivels. You might even want to add a couple of floats or a lure or two, depending on what you'll be fishing for. And you'll need something like a tackle box or a tray to put it all in. But look, don't go overboard. Just buy a little bit to start with. A couple of packets of hooks, a few sinkers and some swivels, just to get started. You can always top up with more later. Right now, you probably just want to get a line in the water. But let's stop and have a look at that gear that you bought first. Chances are, if you're fishing in estuaries, bays, harbours, rivers, fresh or salt water, you probably ended up with one of these. It's called a light spin outfit, and it's based on this, a light spinning reel, also known as a thread line. You might even hear them referred to as a coffee grinder or an egg beater because of their action. They're the most popular style of reel in the world, and for a good reason. They work well and they're easy to use. For fishing in those bays, rivers and lakes, be they fresh or saltwater, you're better off to stick to a fairly small spinning reel, what most manufacturers call their 1000, 2000, 2500 and 3000 sizes. They're plenty big enough, and that'll match up best with a light to medium light spinning rod like this one. This will be anything from about 1.7 to 2.2 metres long, say 5 to 7 and a bit feet in the old scale. Go for a rod with a fairly light whippy tip. This will help you to cast further, to feel those bites, set the hook and land those fish, and it's also lots of fun to fish with. If you have a look here near the handle, most manufacturers add a little sticker suggesting the best line strengths and casting weights to use with that rod. You're looking for something that'll handle lines from about 2 to 6 or 7 kilos breaking strain, and casting weights from a couple of grams up to about 20 or 25 grams. That's a fraction of an ounce to about 3/4 of an ounce on the old scale. But don't get bogged down with all the details. The most important thing is that it feels right to you and it's reasonably well balanced. You don't want to put a great big reel on a little light rod or a tiny little reel on a big heavy rod. Now, if you bought a combo, the makers have already done all the thinking for you and put the right outfit together. They may have even filled it up with line for you. Before we move on to look at all the other bits and pieces that you're going to need, I just wanted to show you two other styles of reel that you'll probably see when you're in the tackle stores or out on the water. This is one of them. It's called a side cast. Now, there's a little bit of debate about whether these were invented in Scotland or Australia, but it's definitely Australian anglers that have put them on the map and made them famous. As the name implies, they turn sideways to cast. It's a really nifty invention. They're very simple, very rugged, so they're great for rock and beach fishing where they might get doused in salt water or dropped in the sand. Very reliable reel. The other one that you might come across is an overhead or bait caster. Now, unlike the other reels that we've looked at so far, this one goes on top of the rod instead of underneath. These are really popular with barramundi fishermen up in the northern half of Australia, and with some keen anglers throwing lures for bass and Murray cod and things like that. They're a great reel, but they're a little bit more expensive and they are a little bit trickier to cast. So for now, let's stick with that light to medium light spinning gear. It'll handle most of the fish that you're likely to encounter when you get started. As well as your rod and reel and some line, you're going to need a few hooks and sinkers, maybe some swivels, perhaps even some floats, And you might even want to try lures. Look, all lures are artificial baits, good fun to fish with, and we'll come back to those later in the series. When it comes to hooks, just get a couple of different sizes. Again, listen to the advice of the people in the tackle shop, but make sure you get some really small ones. There's an old saying, you can catch a big fish on a small hook, but you can't catch a small fish on a big hook. It's pretty true too. Most people use hooks that are way too big. The same goes for sinkers. You'll catch a lot more fish if you use the smallest sinkers that you can get away with. Buy the small ones. If you do need a little bit more weight to cast a bit further or get your bait down in a strong current, just put 2 of these on instead of 1. Easy as that. Now, swivels are really handy for keeping your sinker away from the hook in some rigs, but even more importantly, they take twist out of the line, and twist can cause tangles. But guess what? The best swivels are small ones. Can you see a pattern forming here? Small is good when it comes to fishing. Now you'll need a pair of line trimming scissors and something to put all your hooks and sinkers in. A flat tray or a tackle box like this one. They're not expensive. But don't load it up with heaps of hooks and other gear, because if any salt water gets in here, it'll all rust and be useless. Keep most of your gear at home. Just put enough in here for a trip. Take it out, use it, bring it back and top it up. That's a great tip. Grab yourself a small backpack or a shoulder bag that you can put all your tackle in, plus your lunch and your water bottle and your sunscreen, and a bucket to carry your bait in, and you're ready to hit the water. Oh, unless you didn't get a combo that was already spooled up with line, in which case you'll need to spool up first. And that's what we're going to look at in the next part of this series. Until then, tight lines.